Hi there, I am Sarah Jane Case, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sarah J. Maas's second installment in the Crescent City series.
This is Jac.
And I'm Amy.
This is part 2 of this week's episode, where we're discussing chapters 37 through 39 in House of Sky and Breath. The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author.
This podcast is a discussion, shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
The interpretations presented in this podcast are just a few of many possibilities. Listeners are encouraged to read along and share their own analysis of the text.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series and extended universe spoilers may be discussed with or without warning.
Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
If you are enjoying the podcast, check out our Patreon for more exclusive content. You can find us at patreon.com/Book Talk for Book Talk.
While at the Astronomer's, Bryce wishes that she had Danica's sword. Quote, "She wished she had the reassuring weight and strength of Danica's sword, but the blade would have stood out too much." Bryce was starting to get familiar with the Star Sword. That was the last thing that she used, and it's like obviously far more powerful than Danica's sword. I think it makes sense because she wants to know what happened to the Pack of Devils and Connor. So, like, she wants the sword that's very wolf related. And, she wants to feel closer to them. But it also, it's not, I don't want to say it's a regression. Her immediate instinct is to go for that sword when seeking comfort.
Yeah.
And that needs to change.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, we just saw her lean into her fayness. So we would expect her to want the Star Sword, but she's still trying to find balance and that balance. And I do agree with your point that she's seeking comfort, and Danica's sword brings that comfort.
Yeah. So let's talk mystics. Quote, 3 mystics slept, submerged in greenish cloudy water, breathing masks strapped to their faces. Their white shifts floated around them, doing little to hide the skeletal bodies beneath. 1 male, 1 female, 1 both. That was how it always was, how it had been, how it had always been. Perfect balance. Do we need to go into the 1 both of it all? Like, it seems, I can't tell. It feels like Asham wants the shock value out of it without putting in the work or the respect, I think, would come with that.
Yeah, I struggle with how would Bryce know that there's one person of both.
Maybe there's just like she was saying, that's like how it always was,
it's just
always
common
been.
knowledge.
Yeah.
I felt like that was a throwaway. I didn't feel like SJM cared to explain, and that she didn't want the readers to focus on it. But it is very confusing to me, because immediately I was like, are they non-binary? Do they have both sets of genitalia? Like, what does this mean?
It did feel a little, I don't want to harp on it too long, or, it did feel kind of like a throwaway without thought. And for a book that was written recently, it's not the kind of thing that I think that you can't be like, oh, it's the sign of the times, people weren't really talking about it. And it's like, no, like, you should know better. And if you're going to put something like that in, then do work rather than shock value.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you needed balance and you didn't want to put in the work, just keep it 1 male, 1 female.
That's like, the number is 3.
I understand the power of 3, but, like, then have 3 males, 3 females.
Something. Yeah, yeah. I agree.
Before they get into actually utilizing the mystics to ask the questions that Ithan wants to ask, the astronomer offers the group tea before, quote, we begin formalities. Is this a food is power moment? Is the astronomer trying to exert himself as the wise one? As we go into the scene, we understand that the astronomer is, like, kind of just going through the motions,
Mm-hmm.
giving the group these rote explanations for things.
It's a spiel.
That it's a spiel. He's trying to, like, put to bed any fears they have, but they don't have. He's just really out of touch, and I felt like the tea was part of that. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
why do you think people want to sit here and relax with you and have
Yeah.
tea?
Hey, would you like to have some tea while these bodies are floating around?
Yeah, no, that's weird.
It's super weird. Despite it being Tharion's mission, like I was saying, Ithan comes in and throws some money down, and it's all about Connor. Quote, that drew Bryce's attention. Ithan spoke with such authority. She heard him talk to his teammates as their captain, had seen him in command plenty, but the Ithan she'd known for the past few days had been subdued. It's like more clues that he's going to be prime. I'm not entirely convinced it's worthy, or yeah, people know how I feel. But again, it's a clue because now he's stepping up in a more assertive nature
hmm
in front of another alpha. So there's a level of him that is challenging this other alpha, that is kind of bringing his own quote unquote alphaness in front to the
Are you talking?
forefront there.
Are you talking? Who's the other alpha? The mystic?
Uh-huh.
Okay, but he doesn't know it's an alpha. There's
I
another
think there's
alpha.
something, I think that's like a subconscious level.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
that this is like, the first time that he speaks up with authority in this book is in front of a presence of another alpha, even if he doesn't
Mm,
know.
yeah. Yeah. Interesting. That's a good point.
Thank you. I mean, it's annoying to me. It's like, again, the clues are there. I just don't believe it.
Yeah.
SJM gives more than enough clues that the other alpha mystic stands no chance in this real world. Like, I think I was shocked I can't remember her name. So the other Fendir.
Sigrid.
Sigrid, thank you. I think that, like, when we go into the next book, I'm like, what did you do? You introduced her just to kill her off. Like, that's a weird plot choice. But, in all fairness, she does say pretty clearly, Sigrid has no hope. Quote,
Yeah.
it wasn't that the mystics could see all worlds. No, the gift wasn't the unnerving thing. It was what they gave up for it. Life. True life. The Sigrid is screwed. Like, there's no
Yeah.
hope for her. And we'll get more clues later, but, like, SJM is like, hey, she's fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, though.
Bryce has made her anger known at this point, and we see where she lands with the other guys. Like, just kind of metaphorically. Quote, up and up, Bryce ascended into the heavens, Tharion and Ithan trailing her. Like, the assholes were second guessing this. And it is really funny / annoying for me, like, as, like, not in the writing sense, but like dealing with these male characters, where it's like they go back from, like, being super cocky, you just need to suck it up, to like, oh, I'm gonna let you take the lead and you're going up into the heavens, while they're closer to the metaphorical hell.
Yeah. I mean, what it's showing is that these males have no follow through.
None.
Whereas Bryce is like, if we start shit, we're going to end shit. Like,
It's true.
let's get it done.
It's so true.
I want to take a moment to talk about the extended universe. The whole space that the mystics are in becomes an orrery, mapping the entire solar system with 7 planets. We've talked about it before. We talked about it in Earth and Blood. And we know that the Autumn King has one of these orreries in his study. The astronomer mentions the Autumn King's orrery and says that, quote, it's as precise as mine, if not more so. Which is an interesting note. Why does the Autumn King need such a precise orrery?
Mm-hmm.
Then the astronomer says, quote, the orrery helps us answer the most fundamental questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? These are the precise questions Danica was asking herself, that the
Yeah.
Autumn King has been asking himself. and that Bryce should be asking. But she doesn't have enough knowledge yet to understand that those are the questions. She's not at that level. But it's I get goosebumps. I have goosebumps because I'm like, SJM just laid it out right there for us. And this is all before Bryce finds out what Danica used to search for in Griffin antiquities.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
At one point, Bryce asks the astronomer about the orrery, quote, "It's tech, not magic." The astronomer answers, "Can it not be both?" And I think that's an interesting question to pose in this moment, right? Because they're searching for the truth of the universe. Well, the astronomer uses the orrery to search for truths about the universe. And they're there because Ithan wants to find the truth about Connor. Tharion wants to find the truth about Emil. What I see this as, though, is a reflection of Bryce, that she can be both. She can be both tech and magic. She can be both human and fae.
She's always two.
She's always two, but she always thinks in extremes, right?
Yeah.
It's either or, it's never both. She's either human or she is fae. And I think just like we saw in Akatar, Feyre trying to balance feminine and masculine, this book in particular is about Bryce learning to balance fae and human. What I love about this sequence is that during our first read, I hate the mystic stuff. It felt so pointless. But in fact, it's like what everything relies on. Sky and breath, flame and shadow, what comes later in Akatar, it all hinges on this sequence and us understanding the sequence.
Yeah.
I also just want to point out 7 planets are balanced by 7 rings of hell or levels of hell. 7 courts, there's just so many sevens. And anyway, go ahead.
I just feel like it's also such a well-written chapter.
It is.
Like, I feel like there was a lot of time in the stylistic choices of writing in here.
Yeah, I agree.
Bryce starts to get more and more angry. Understandably. Quote, Bryce clenched her hands into fist. Micah had allowed it to happen. Her piece of shit father turned a blind eye too. As Autumn King, he had the ability to put an end to this practice, or at least advocate to stop it, but he didn't. Of course, the Autumn King would never do that. Like, I think that was... I don't think that was her lamenting on, like, why won't my daddy do this? Like, I think it's just more of saying, wait a minute, that position has the ability to advocate for this. And remember, she just claimed her title. So, the wheels are turning.
Yeah. That she potentially has the ability to shut this kind of thing down.
Yeah, I just kind of have a note, and I feel like you kind of answered this, and I'll talk about it later, but just a quick talk. I was like, why is Ithan fronting the bill? Like, why is he asking about Connor? This is supposed to be Tharion's journey, but like you kind of touched on it. I'm going to touch on it later, but if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, just Tharion's a lowlife, and he covets everything that everybody else has. So of course he's going to allow someone else to pay the bill. To get what he needs.
Absolutely. Blood salt is used to channel hell, and I think it's one of the best things that SJM created, much better than a magical bean that teaches you the language. Quote, blood for life, blood for death. It was summoning salt infused with blood from a laboring mother's sex and blood from a dying male's throat. The 2 greatest transitions of a soul in and out of this world. The whole section is very ethereal and otherworldly, and it's freaky. It is meant to not have any chill and to be very disturbing. And the tones, the description, the writing style, all of it is excellent, even if I have questions surrounding the thing. But like, I just love that description of like a laboring mother's blood.
Yeah, no, I think this is the first and maybe only scene in Crescent City where I was like, I'm terrified. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I just did not have that fear initially.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to remember how I read. I said I've always liked this book a lot. So I've always been like, the second book has been one of my favorites. I don't know why, but I'm pretend like subconscious me understood this.
Yeah, that's fair. I did feel dread the first time I read this part. I think this is totally off topic, but
Yeah.
I think SJM is like J.J. Abrams, excellent at writing a pilot, excellent at the first book.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the first book is always the masterpiece.
Yes and no. Yes and no. It's the same way that ACOTAR is a masterpiece, but Mist and Fury is fantastic in its own right.
Yeah. I understand. I think if we're talking about technical,
yes,
ACOTAR, Earth and Blood, those are masterpieces, and that doesn't discount the greatness of all the other books that come after. There are still great things about the after.
No, I see what you're saying. I'm just saying, I'm just wondering. I'm not even claiming the words I'm about to say. Okay, so at first I was like, yes, the technical writing, everything was perfection in there. I agree with that there. And I was about to say, well, you can say the same thing here. But we said this last week where I think the scenes with Ithan hinders other plot points with Bryce. Because we should be getting more screen time when we just don't have the room with her.
Yeah.
And I'm going to agree with what you said. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to be like, nah. And now I say, yeah. Ithan sucks. Yeah. Ithan sucks. Tharion sucks. Like, it just, God, they just suck in their own different right. Tharion sucks in a way that's like interesting as a character. Ithan just sucks. Bryce is uncomfortable with what's going on. And Tharion says, just enjoy the show, Legs. I mean, it felt like such a like little female, little, because Legs is like, it's just, I know that's his nickname for her, but it's based off of sexual desire. It's based off of like, looking attractive and stuff. And he just like kind of like tapped her on the head, being like, shut up now, look pretty.
Yep.
And Tharion doesn't get as much attention or movement in this sequence. He is fairly quiet and is allowing what's happening, but he definitely is like, you can tell that he's kind of regretting it, but at the same time, he's like putting up a front. Later, Tharion jerks his chin to the exit below and says, quote, "Go ahead, princess. We'll see you later." Like, you little bitch. He was also kind of at one point being like, is this the right choice? Like, oh no, she should go first.
Right. Ithan and Tharion were just like trailing behind Bryce because they seemed like they were regretting their decision. This sequence made me really, really dislike Tharion more than I already disliked him.
Agreed.
Like Celestina to Hunt, Tharion's using his pet names for Bryce and her title to make it all feel removed and impersonal, and it's very condescending. It's very patronizing. And let's not forget, he even started the chapter this way. Quote, "If you can't stomach it, Legs, then sit out here on the curb."
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
He is the one who insisted Bryce had to be told. Yet he's treating her like shit. Like, he knew she was going to cut off his balls if he didn't tell her.
Right?
But now he's punishing her for wanting to come along because she thinks these boys are idiots. Like, it's so annoying. I am glad, though, that Bryce pushes back. Quote, "I think you've lost the right to call me that after this."
Yeah.
Thank God. Finally setting some boundaries, because Tharion needs boundaries. Because
I know. But like, as much as he annoys me, at the end of this episode, they're going to get into kind of a bit of a tiff. And I'm just like, and that is why he is such a good, complex character.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But like, we're flagging these moments. We're building up. Which is like, so you can tell like I was like conflicted as I was going through these notes, because I was like, does this make sense? Ithan said quietly, quote, "Bryce, I know this sucks. This is not okay. But if it's the only way to learn what's going on with Connor," she opened her mouth to snap that Connor would have condemned this place, but she could see him, Connor, shining right there in Ethan's face. When did this become important? And I get that, like, for Ithan, this is his one personality trait that's in Sunball and stuff. It's his motive and everything. And I feel like this is one of the last moments where Bryce is clinging on to the emotional decision or the
Mm-hmm.
emotional option. She's becoming very cutthroat with her what's the practical stuff, even if she comes from an emotional, empathetic place.
Yeah.
This is a bad move. This
Yeah.
comes from a emotionally selfish place of like wanting to see where Connor is. Not that you shouldn't do this, but I feel like it's fair to do this like checklist, add it to the bottom.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. However, I do see this as kind of similar to the June situation
Mhm,
where
mhm.
Bryce can't solve her own problems. So,
Yeah.
if there is a solution to the problems of those that she loves,
Mhm.
then even if she doesn't like it, let's follow through with it because at least
Yeah.
somebody gets a happy ending.
You can even say that kind of like how Bryce was trying to preserve June's naivety and,
Mm-hmm.
optimism. It's the same way that she's trying to preserve Ethan's concern for his brother, because Bryce cannot afford to have that concern.
Yeah.
Like that's just not an option, but it's like, but he can, so she can preserve that in him.
Yeah. No, I think that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Bryce is making sense, guys. The astronomer starts to get a little feisty with Bryce, and she's just having a bad day. She's with a bunch of shit men. I feel really bad for her. Quote, most astronomers and mystics have been put out of business these days, thanks to fancy tech and self-righteous busybodies like you. He spat towards Bryce. She snarled at him, the sound more primal fey than she liked. Bryce just tapped into her fey instincts to defend, and at this point, like, her fey instincts have been an outrage of emotion, where she
Hmm.
can't contain it. But this is like same thing, an outrage of emotion that she can't contain, but in a way that's defensive.
Yeah.
And again, like, these are moments that are going to build up to for her, that Faye doesn't have to mean to dominate in this moment.
Yeah.
It could be meant to liberate. And that's going to be a very important distinction for Bryce.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I do think that this goes back to my discussion of balance, right? That Bryce is swinging back and forth between Fae and human, Fae and
Mhm.
human. And in this moment, the Fae, even though she doesn't want primal Fae to be present, it
Yeah.
is serving her and not in a way that's an offensive, it's a defensive move.
Yeah, absolutely. We then get daddy number 2. And I mean daddy number 2 as in Hunt's daddy.
Yeah.
And every single time I just think of Mamma Mia with all the 3 dads trying to figure out which one's Hunt's dad. Thanatos. And this scene is perfect. Like, this is definitely a chills moment here.
Hmm.
So this is Thanatos talking to the mystic. Quote, "They are listening?" "Yes." Again silence. And the demon prince said, "Let me see them. Let them see me." The mystic's eyes flew open in the tank below. Like, that's such a jar. And then end scene.
End
Like,
scene, end chapter.
end chapter. It was like the writing is so good in this chapter.
Yeah, I
So
completely agree.
talented. Very visual.
And very it's creepy. You're like, "Oh, no,
Yeah.
I don't
Visceral.
want a prince of hell to see me."
I mean, I'm not
Maybe you
against
do.
it. Yeah. I mean, was he single?
So we then move into chapter 39, where Bryce and Thanatos are going to have a conversation. Now, for those of you who don't know, Thanatos is a Greek god for death, and in Crescent City, he is, quote, "a prince of death. Souls bow to me." So I just wanted to acknowledge the Greek mythology connection.
I think he's my favorite Prince of Hell. That
Really?
says a lot about me, yeah.
I find that interesting because I think my impression of him in Flame and Shadow is that he's completely different than this Thanatos.
I can't remember Flame and Shadow him.
I think he was very well, let's talk through the chapter.
Okay. Like, right now, Deadly Daddy is doing it. Thanatos gets a glimpse of who is technically his daughter-in-law. Quote, "He gazed right at Bryce, as if he could indeed see her through the mystic eyes. It's daddy-in-law." I think I just came up with something. Dilf-in-law? Daddy I like to fuck-in-law? That's complicated.
That is complicated.
Also, he can smell the starlight on her. He knows exactly who she is. He knows,
Mhm.
like, he's like, "That's my son's charged up buddy. I don't know. Like, he doesn't know about the mate thing, but he definitely knows, like, okay, that's a someone.
Yeah.
Quote, "You're the one my brothers speak about." Ithan and Tharion glance between her and the demon, hands within easy reach of their weapons, little as they could do, because they're weaklings. And they've been bullying her the whole time. So it's sometimes like even, and then like, talking down to her. And now it's like, okay, boys, step aside. The adults need to talk.
Tharion and Ithan just need to go home and be put to bed. Like, little boys need their nap.
Yeah.
Bryce observes, though, that, quote, "This male had none of Adis's slickness or what Hunt had told her of Apollyon's smug arrogance. Nothing that indicated mercy or humor." And this, to me, in this moment, flags that just like Ithan and Tharion's weapons are useless on this projection of a demon, Bryce's usual weapons, her charm, her feminine, aren't going to work. Her humor, it's not going to work on this because this guy doesn't emote. He's very threatening.
No emotion. Yeah.
No emotion.
Why do I like this? Back to therapy, Jack.
I was going to say, you like emotionally unavailable men?
I don't know. I was telling my mom last night, I was like, I made a joke about the strong silent type. I'm like, I just love people who have, I mean, it's you. It's the like,
yeah.
That's the thing where it's like the people who are just kind of like, try to keep things closer to them. And then if I can get you to crack and smile.
Yeah. You like a challenge.
I do. Except now you're too easy. I get you to laugh all the time. You're smiling right now.
I will try harder to not
No,
laugh
don't
then.
do it. I need the validation. The entire meeting is with the adults, Bryce and Thanatos. They go back and forth. Bryce killed the shepherd. She's like, boo-hoo, get over it. And he's like, did you just mock me? And she's like, yeah, like, whatever, bitch. Like, I just want answers. Even though she's scared, she's just sitting there being like, I'm going to have all the personality and sass, even if I am shitting myself. And then Thanatos says, quote, I will give them to you, the answers, right? I will give them to you only out of respect for a warrior capable of slaying one of my creations. Shall I meet you on the battlefield, however, I will take vengeance for the shepherd's death. Bryce's mouth dried out. It's a date. He just showed her that he is he views her as an equal, and that it's a respect, like I'm going to answer even if for respect. Again, I feel like that should have been some clues that he kind of knows everything and is trying to help it out, because it's like, that's such a weak thing. Like, you killed a dog, I'm going to help you. But how much of this is an act on his part, and how much of it, remind me of Flame and Shadow, please.
I don't remember, because I feel like I feel like he shows up in one of those sequences with Hunt in the dungeon with Adis and Apollyon and is like, yeah, I made him. Like, and he's like, yeah, I'm here to help kill the Asteri. Like, I don't remember him having personality.
Yeah, then that is like, because, okay, Apollyon, who was the one that had history with Jessica?
Apollyon.
And that was funny. Like, I felt
that was funny. Yeah.
Yeah, which kind of bums me out that, like, Jessica died, because I want more with them.
Yeah.
Thanatos just kind of feels like, all you guys are idiots.
He feels like the guy in the lab trying to do experiments all the time that is like, none of you are worth my time.
I just love a nerd.
I don't know. I felt I need to go back and read Flame and Shadow, because this Thanatos is really intimidating and does not line up with my memory of Thanatos in Flame and Shadow.
I know, we have to re-listen to to Flame and Shadow before we do Silver Flames.
I know.
Future us problem.
Yep. We'll manage it somehow in between all the
other books that we have to prepare
book
for
club.
We
have to do. Yeah.
We'll just power listen.
Yeah.
Like 3 speed. In the middle of questions about Connor, like, because there's like, is Connor down there? And he's like, no, I don't see him. Tharion then jumps in and asks about Emil. Bryce thinks, quote, thank the gods the prince's words held no hint of awareness about what Emil was or what Apollyon might want from him. It's because she has a very strong feeling at this point that he's human. I think she like made that deduction, like, he's probably just human.
Yeah.
And she's like, please don't know. I don't want anyone else to know.
Right. Let's not Let's not make this more complicated than it already is.
Yeah.
Excuse us while we hydrate, and you listen to this ad.
Book Talk for Book Talk is sponsored by BetterHelp.
It's the start of a new school year, and one thing I love more than anything is seeing the little freshmen come to campus, and it's almost a childlike wonder that they have.
There's something about kids that just have this unabashed courage that I strive for, and it's something that I've been working with my therapist on. And I'm doing a 5K this weekend, Amy, and I don't think I would have done that if my therapist hadn't encouraged me.
That is such a great idea. My therapist was so helpful when I was first starting to date and gave me a lot of tips on how to manage my internal feelings about it. I love working with her because even now that I'm out of the dating game, I still feel like I'm learning a lot and trying new things.
And that's the beauty of therapy, is that you never stop learning or growing. That's why we're so excited to tell you that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.
BetterHelp is such a convenient way to start therapy. It's entirely online and designed to be flexible and convenient.
All you need to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and then you're going to get matched with a licensed therapist. And they make it so easy for you to switch therapists if you need to. And that way you can really find the right connection.
And there's no additional charge to switch therapists. You can do it any time that feels appropriate to you.
Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/booktalk today to get 10% off your first month.
That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/booktalk. BOOKTOK.
And start your therapy journey today.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk. Thanatos then is like, you know what, this conversation's over. I'm hungry. I'm going to eat the male mystic soul and start shit.
Okay, that's
Quote,
not great. That is not great.
No, it's not. It's not. Quote, "It has been a long while since a mortal fly buzzed all the way down to hell. I will taste this one's soul, as I once sipped from them like fine wine." Feels very Underking to me in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Mortals are food to be consumed. And you know what? Poor Mystic. He didn't choose this life.
It's amazing what I pick and choose to remember.
Yeah, you definitely did not have that note.
I forgot it.
I had to put that one in there.
Oops. Because I definitely underlined it.
And now he starts shit.
Yeah, he's starting shit here. Quote, "I do not care for my brother's agenda. I do not heed to their rules and restraints and illusions of civilization. I shall taste all of you like this, you and your masters, once the doors between our worlds open again, starting with you, Starborn." Again, I'm confused by the motivation because he knows that Hunt and Bryce are a pair. He knows
Yeah.
that he wants to get rid of the Asteri. The only way the worlds are going to open is with Bryce. Like, I think what makes it more confusing is that, like, Apollyon put up a front too. Like, they're
Yeah.
all putting up fronts, and I
Yeah.
can't tell who's who and what's what. Who, what.
Yeah, I can't tell if I just don't remember Flame and Shadow very well,
Yeah.
or if the narrative changed because of the rewrite of Flame and Shadow.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if there was any discussion in Flame and Shadow of, like, oh, we put up this front because maybe the Astronomer would report to the Asteri what was
I don't
said.
remember, and I
I
don't
don't
remember that.
remember. I
Yeah.
don't remember. But yeah, because they seem like just like loyal dogs. Like, the Princes of Hell just seem like loyal dogs.
Oh. Who are they
In
loyal to? Oh, in
Bryce
Flame
and
and
Hunt,
Shadow. Yeah, in
in
Flame
Flame
and Shadow.
right, in Flame and Shadow, and they're just there to kill the Asteri.
Mhm.
So I don't understand all this fronting.
Yeah, agreed. Ithan saves all 3 of the mystics from drowning after Thanatos, like, freezes everything and then bounces. The wolf mystic, Sigrid, demands to be sent back. Quote, "Send me back," she screamed, the words barely more than a hoarse whisper. "Back!" The astronomer knelt by the female, reaching for the tubes that Ithan had ripped free. "They cannot exist in this world anymore. Do not want to exist in this world." So many clues. Like, Sigrid doesn't want to be there. She wants to go back. There is no hope for her. She is incapable of leaving and returning from this world.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's gonna be a point in the future where Ithan interprets the "send me back" as actually wanting to be able to live, be with her
Oh, right,
family,
right.
etcetera.
Because he's stupid.
Yeah, and I don't know that the Astronomer is actually being truthful when he says they don't wanna exist in this world,
Mhm.
but I do believe when he says they cannot exist in this world.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like,
Yeah.
they have no understanding of what the world is.
Mhm.
They've only seen it, they've never experienced it, right?
Yeah. I hope this doesn't come off as me being like, "Send her back, it's fine, she wants to be there." Like,
Oh, no,
I
no, no,
don't
no,
mean that.
no.
I know, in case for the one person that's like, "Damn, Jack, what the you're cold."
I think what it I think this is all really good setup for who Sigrid is in Flame and Shadow
Mhm.
and why she's ultimately gonna choose to be a Reaper,
Mhm, mhm.
because she could not exist in this world in
Yeah.
her mortal form.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it is, but that doesn't mean she doesn't want to live.
Yep.
When the Astronomer promises to send the Mystics back to their tanks and so that they can float around and wander through the
Mhm.
world, Bryce sees, quote, "each of his rings glimmered, projecting rays around the Mystic's head like a corona." Now, this is
Mm.
specifically Sigrid, who the Astronomer is talking to in this moment. He's trying to calm her down because she's the one that's screaming. And we have this corona of light around
Mhm.
Sigrid. Now, it's very Renaissance painting. It's very depictions of Christ,
I did not
right?
catch this at all. That's great.
So it gives us the illusion that this female mystic, who we're going to learn later is an alpha wolf, who we learn later is a Fendir, is going to be a savior.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's such great setup for it to all
Yeah.
fall apart.
Wow. Good catch.
Thanks.
Great catch. Bryce is mad. She wants she wants to help the sprites, quote, but what could she do? What authority did she have to free the sprites? What power could she wield beyond blinding him and snatching the rings off his fingers? Bryce understands power and titles. Like, again, she's been mulling it over. She's been kind of like thinking a little bit more of what she could do. And all of this is build up for Crescent City 3 when she decides to become queen and dismantles everything. And,
Mhm.
thinking about it now, I bet she understood early on in Flame and Shadow that she needed to become queen of everything in order to
Yeah.
dismantle it. And it's probably one of her own side quests of like, I need to be in charge of all this shit to bring it down.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Rather than her, like, I don't know, deciding last minute of like, oops, I'm queen again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then as, she's thinking about like, should I steal the sprite? Should I not steal the sprites? She also thinks, quote, she'd make it a block before the Ox or the 33rd would call in. If Hunt was the one called to apprehend her, she knew She knew he'd have her back in an instant. She couldn't make him choose. I want this to be an important moment to really look at because we haven't had a lot of Bryce in her mind. We've seen a lot of her moving forward, being a little more willy-nilly about her life. And I will say at the beginning of the book, we did get more Bryce and her deciding like, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Now that they're mates, now that they've agreed and stuff, I do like having this moment of saying like, I need to think about Hunt too.
Yeah, which is really important for when Hunt is going to be in confinement for 2 weeks at the barracks.
Yeah.
This is going to inform her choices during that time period, that she can't make Hunt choose her every time.
Yep.
Because she understands the risks associated with that.
Yep. So now they've all left, right? And Tharion and Bryce are arguing outside. And I want to look at this argument in 3 different parts. The first part, quote, "You're a fucking asshole. You know that?" Tharion threw her a mocking grin. "You're in the gray with us, Legs. Don't get boring now that you've got a fancy crown." I find that interesting because Tharion considers himself morally gray, but more importantly, he sees others as morally gray. That means he can't imagine them being anything other than what he is. Like, isn't everyone just as gray and shitty as him? And if there's anything about Bryce, I feel like she's not morally gray, Like that doesn't mean bad choices doesn't make someone morally gray. I think that she's going to do what she needs to do to help people, but that her morals are set there in stone. And again, like Tharion is like everyone is just as lowly and manipulative as him.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting argument because I think we have to look at what do we define as morally gray?
Mhm.
Do you define morally gray as the ends justify the means?
Mhm.
Right? That I did it for the greater good, so it doesn't matter what I did to get there.
Mhm.
Is that morally gray? And sometimes we argue that it's not. But sometimes we argue that it is. And so, like, I think about Reese.
Yeah,
Think
I was
about
about to
Reese
bring up
and
Reese.
Under the Mountain. Is he morally gray if the ends justify the means?
When I think about Reese being morally gray, I don't think about him being morally gray under the mountain. I
Yeah.
think about him being morally gray with how he handles Farah.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And I think that like it, ends justify the means, but with the people. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's like, if it's to protect I mean, it really is like a pick and choose these things,
Yeah,
like
it is.
Reese was trying to protect his entire kingdom, his court, ends justify the means. Reese
Yeah.
trying to block Farah from getting bad news, not the same thing.
Yeah. So I think we have to look at the outcome that the person's fighting for, right?
Yeah.
And that is a difference between Tharion and Bryce.
Mhm.
Tharion is focused on personal gain. He's focused on freedom. He's focused on saving his own hide, where Bryce is focused on saving others and defeating the Asteri ultimately.
Yeah.
So in that way, I would say they're not the same.
Mhm. Mhm.
However, what I will say is that they both will do what it takes to get there. They are both an end justifies the means
Yeah.
kind of people.
Yeah.
And in that way, that is gray. If you're choosing to I am choosing to define it as gray right now. She is willing to lie. She is willing to deceive. She is willing to do certain things because she feels like her morals and her choices are for the greater
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
Is she as gray as Tharion? I don't know. But
That's the end of the question. That's
that
the
is the end of
end.
the question. I will say, I think through the symbolism of this section, we're seeing metaphorically that she is in a gray moment right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Look at her treatment of June and Ithan in these decisions. Ithan using the mystics, not a great choice.
Yeah.
Fighting for June when June doesn't want to be fought for, not a
Mhm.
great choice. I do think Tharion's calling Bryce gray to make himself feel better.
Yeah.
Because if Bryce is gray, it justifies his gray,
Mhm.
right? And so I cannot tell if Bryce retaliates because Tharion is way, way off base and
Yeah.
he's like just got bad morals,
Mhm.
or because Bryce is like, you're right, I know I'm doing secretive stuff and I do feel a little gray right now, so I'm going to retaliate.
Yeah. I'm going to say this because I know it's tapping into our end of episode question, but I'm going to forget it. So I'm going to say it now.
Okay.
What you said is spot on. What do we define as morally gray? I'm realizing that I feel like, me personally, the morals are in question, not the actions. So morally gray to me is a combination. I'm taking a little bit of what you said, is a combination between self-interest and larger interest.
Mm.
So I think Tharion isn't necessarily morally gray. I think he's morally black. Like he is,
Yeah.
his interests are purely selfish. I think Bryce, her morals of wanting to help others, now the actions, is the gray part, but her morals itself, the person who I think is probably really, in my personal definition of what morally gray would mean, would be Hunt, who
Mm.
is a combination of self-interest and larger. I'm saying it there. We have a larger conversation. We're tapping into it, but I will forget it. So that's why I was like, say words now. Unless you have a thought
Okay.
now. You can say it now.
No, I don't have a thought now.
So now into the second part of this argument. Quote, a low growl slipped from her throat. I always wondered why the River Queen made you her captain of intelligence. Now I know. What does that mean? Tharion advanced a step, towering over her. Like hell would she back down. It means that you pretended to be Mr. Charming, but you're just a ruthless backstabber who will do anything to achieve his ends. Talk about like calling him out. Like the whole
Mm-hmm.
charming thing, that was something that we know, insecure about.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
know that he has a complex that like he's not good at anything. He's just kind of charming.
Mm-hmm.
And she calls him to a T. And this is the second time in this book that Tharion has, quote, stepped to Bryce. We know he's bigger than her. And this move, it is only meant to be intimidating and threatening. And I cannot respect a man who does that to a woman. I don't care how powerful she is. Like, first off, it's such an annoying thing to do in general, but you're going to do that to a woman? No, that's unacceptable. It's like, he's trying to show his power position. But also, this was the moment that I was like, okay, it all makes sense. Of course he's going to, and like you already said this, but like, of course Tharion is going to let Ithan do his whole thing of like, I need to find my brother. Here's all the money. Tharion could probably charge this to the river court, the blue court. Like he
Yeah.
could put that 100 gold coins did not need to come from Ithan. He could have very easily put that on his expense, but he did it. And he asked the question about Emil in the middle of everything. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even like, okay, well, I also have a question. It was like he was waiting for enough time, enough moment of chaos that he can slip his question in. He had no thoughts.
No. And the astronomer makes it clear you get charged for every question.
Yep.
Every time Ethan's like, I got it covered. I'll cover it. I'll cover it. So Tharion is taking advantage of
Yep.
Ithan, Ethan's concern,
Yep.
Ethan's money.
Yep.
It's so inappropriate. And I feel like this is just him trying to get back at Above because Above is better. Above looks down on the people from the beneath. And Tharion wants to be from the Above, but the Above treat him like crap. Like, he's just taking advantage of other people's privilege, and he feels entitled to that.
Tharion truly has no one, though.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about it, like, Hunt has Isaiah, like, even his other, like, his friends at the Ox, Rune has his friends. Ithan had his friends. Like, everyone
Mhm.
has friends or family that they're close to. We have not met a single person that Tharion is close to or
Yep.
cares about,
Yep.
which then goes to his next argument. Tharion then says, quote, try having your family at the mercy of the River Queen and come cry to me about morals. Bryce responds, my family is at the mercy of all Vanir, she snapped. That is like, talk about her being like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
This is, like, you think you're in danger. Also, I don't remember him really saying that his family was in danger of the River Queen at this point. I know in the third book he does talk about it, of saying like,
Yeah.
I really screwed them over.
No, I think this is the first real mention of it.
Yeah, and it really feels more of a grasping at straws rather than this is a deep-seated fear I've had this entire time that I'm just now acknowledging.
Right. Like, if it was a real fear, we would have we've had plenty of Tharion perspective.
Yeah.
We would have seen it come up before.
Absolutely.
And if it is a deep-seated fear and he's pushed his family away because his sister was killed, he's worried about the River Queen, fine, whatever. He still has such this victim mentality,
Yeah.
and no one is a bigger victim than Bryce and her family, and you don't see her acting like Tharion.
No, not at all. So it comes down to, for me, like, does this scene make sense? And as you people can tell through my journey, I was like, oh yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's again, I think on a first read, it feels like a throwaway, like, why the hell are we here? It
Yeah.
doesn't seem necessary at all, but actually the entire series hinges
On this moment, yeah.
on this moment, and I think we're gonna see Tharion's growth come back to this moment too.
Yeah, and like it really, this is where the difference between Ithan and Tharion for me,
Mhm.
where Ithan, he had a lot more vocal moments in here. I did not walk away with him being developed. He was complaining about his brother. He was, he kind of like, he was trying to save the other one. So we get something there.
Yeah.
I feel we got so much more insight into Tharion and how he views himself and how he views other people and what he's willing to do for that. And I just feel like, again, like, do I like Tharion as an individual? No. Do I love Tharion as a complex character? Yes.
Yeah, he is a very complex character. I hate him, but I love to hate him because SJM does a good job.
Yeah. He's like the Tamlin of this book.
He is. He really is.
All right, let's get into some breadcrumbs.
In chapter 37, the Harpy taunts Hunt before he goes to see Celestina by saying, "You'll get what's coming to you, Athalar." Hunt replies, "Likewise." Yep, they sure as hell both do.
Also in chapter 37, Hunt sees the Hind in the hallway outside of Celestina's office. Quote, as if the mere thought of the word rebel had summoned her, he found the Hind leaning against the wall. We think she's summoned as a rebel hunter, but really she's summoned because she's a rebel herself.
Yeah.
Tricky, SGM,
Tricky, tricky, tricky. I just love that. I love going back and reading that and being like, this doesn't mean what we thought it meant.
Yeah.
In chapter 38, the Astronomer talks about his other mystics. Quote, "This trio is a good one. I've had them for a while now with no issues. The last group, one drifted too far and for too long. They dragged the others with them. Such a waste." Sounds like potentially some kind of Akatar or Throne of Glass clue.
Yeah, it just felt like some kind of like she just dropped that in there to forever. Like, we're going to come back to that in however many books.
I'm going to put that there just in case I need it for the future.
Right. Finally, in chapter 38, quote, in the Eternal City, I heard they have thousands of mystics in the palace catacombs, mapping farther and farther into the cosmos, speaking of creatures that we shall never know. And why would the Asteri need that except to find Prythian and then eventually try to find Bryce?
Yep. All these little clues setting up Flame and Shadow.
So good. Okay, Bryce. I almost called you Bryce. Amy, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Is Bryce as great as Tharion claims, or are these two characters mirrors for one another?
I wonder if the answer is neither, now that I'm thinking about it. We know that readers struggle with Bryce in this series, and we've talked a lot about how when she doesn't get as much screen time, we don't get to see a lot into her brain. So, of course, we're going to struggle with Bryce because we don't know what she's thinking, and it's convenient to have so many POVs because it hides a lot of the things that she's working on.
Yeah.
This all comes back to the question, do the ends justify the means? Is Bryce gray by wanting to look out for everyone else and for doing whatever means necessary to look out for those people? I think in the narrative process and in the symbolism, SJM is trying to convey that. SJM is trying to convey Bryce is trying to find her balance and she's swung too far on the pendulum.
Yeah.
I don't know, however, that means she is gray. She might be gray in this moment. I think her and Tharion get into their little spat because he feels like she's finally come down to his level. And he wants her to be on his level. I don't know that she and Tharion are truly matched in this moment, like you said earlier.
What's funny about all this is that Tharion has looked for ways that he and Bryce are similar leading
Yeah.
up to it, right? He likes her apartment. He likes the way the setup is. He wants to have what Bryce has. Like, he said that several times. And then Bryce has seen herself in other characters. She sees herself in June and Emil. And I think that in this moment, we see her for the first time actively not seeing herself in a character.
Yeah.
Being like, you're a piece of shit. I want nothing to do with you. Your choices here are selfish and I don't like them.
Yeah.
And that could bring her to the pendulum back to, trying to do the more moral thing. And, for a character that we've seen only extreme empathy and wanting to see herself in other people, like, again, even Ithan in this section, Tharion really screwed up if she can't even see herself in him, because I think
Yeah.
she wants to see herself in other people. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean that in a very empathetic way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in a lot of ways, she's the underdog, and she
Mhm.
takes care of fellow underdogs.
Mhm.
And Tharion, in his own right, is an underdog, but
Absolutely.
he has gone too far
Yeah.
for Bryce to justify empathizing with. Like,
Yeah.
she can't empathize with him anymore because he is just too invested in his own gain,
Mhm.
and that's not what Bryce is about.
Yeah.
I think maybe at one point Bryce and Tharion were mirrors. I think that's why Bryce tolerated Tharion for as long as she did, but I
Mhm.
don't think that that's true anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I like today's conversation.
Yeah, I thought today was a great conversation given it was only 30 pages of the
This
book.
was our shortest chapters read
Yeah,
through. It was fantastic. I loved it thoroughly.
I did
Amy and I
too.
were like, okay, at the middle of, we did that on purpose without thinking about it.
I think you did it on purpose.
Yeah, well, I remember talking to you afterwards being like,
Yeah.
"No, Amy, trust me, we're gonna want this, like,
Yeah,
middle
yeah, yeah,
break."
yeah.
And now I'm thinking, like, for Silver Flames, I'm like, "Remember, around
Yeah.
episode 8, we're gonna really need that short episode."
Yeah, yep, I agree.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we'll be exploring chapters 40 through 43 of A House in Sky and Breath.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk. Bye! This is what I said, Amy, on Friday when I went on Wave Runners.
You're probably in a meeting. Look at it. I went 45 miles an hour. I feel like a god of frat boys. I couldn't go in circles, though, so there is that.
For the first part of that, I felt like you were trying to impersonate Jennifer Coolidge. I think you were doing it subconsciously.
That's fine. What did it sound like her?
Just the intonation and the pauses.
Oh, I thought I was.
I feel like a god.
I felt I was trying to imitate, like, pretend to be a man.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I am Jennifer Coolidge. Want a hot dog real bad.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.